All right, welcome back to weekly classes. This is quarter two, week 7. This week we got a lot of videos. It's not actually really just 1 week. It's probably going to be more like 2. So this will be week 7 and 8. But if you can get it all completed in 1 week, then you'll have a whole week to animate more cool stuff, and that's kind of what we want to do. Today we are going to, this entire weekly system, we're going to create a simple bone system. We're going to create a skinning animation and a skinning modifier, and then we are going to animate a character walk cycle in Autodesk 3D Studio Max 2014. Today in particular, we are going to work on the next slide, which is we are going to set up our mesh. Now, we've got this Minecraft character that we created before, and you have access to all the files that I use in the usual place. But we have that ready for you. First thing we have to do is get this Minecraft person ready. Alright, so let's do it. Alright, so here's where we left off with our silly little pose, and we had that animation that kind of looks like this. Now we can't do a whole lot with this, so what we're going to do is we're going to erase this animation and get rid of it. Okay, so first things first, we're going to highlight everything, and then we are going to delete all of the keyframes. Alright, now that I've deleted all the keyframes, so I scrub back and forth, nothing actually moves. Now that's great, except now we got to get them back to a position of like a neutral position, because right now this is not a great setup. So let's do that. In order to do that, we need to hit E for our rotation, and you'll notice you should be in local rotation. We've talked about our coordinate systems before, and I'll pull my notes up just to make sure we're on task here. Here are my notes for this week. We were talking about reference coordinates view, rotational point centers. We're going to remove our old animation, collapse all stacks. I'm going to show you a new tool to collapse everything at once. We're going to discuss naming conventions, explain the naming tool, and rename the rest of the scene. So that's our goals for today. Alright, I'll put that over so I don't forget anything. So anyway, we're starting with our reference coordinates review. So remember, we talked before about all these different setups over here, and the most important ones we're going to work with today are local. Local and world. That's really all we're going to worry about today. So I'm going to switch it to local, and we're going to look at what sort of rotation we have set up right now. Okay? Each one of these characters has its own rotation. Actually, let's see if our world setup or view. If I zero these out, because they seem to have been saved in the view look, if I zero these out by just selecting each piece and then right clicking it, ugh, that's weird, we can set them back to where they started, which seems to be great. So in view mode, or in view coordinates, just zero out all of those pieces. I did it individually to make sure each piece looks right. Now when I look at it from the front, that's great. Looks good. Now, if things aren't rotating properly, make sure you have your pivot point centers as your rotational pivots. There's a bunch of different options. If you have something like this, if you select something, it's going to rotate from the center, and that's not what we want. We want to make sure that we're rotating from our pivot point centers. Alright, so we've got this set up. Now what we want to do is we want to get our character set up in a T-pose. A T-pose is really useful when we skin our creations, because we're going to want to make sure that things like the hands aren't close to the hips, because when we first set up our animation, all of these verts, which we have very few of, will be set in the they'll be stuck to the hips, and that's not what we want. Alright, so today we're just going to set him up in a T-pose so we can get him ready for animation. So we removed the old animation. We talked about our rotational point centers, and we are going to collapse all of our stacks. So if on each one of these we've got an unwrap modifier, right? And that's okay, but we don't really want all of those. So I'm going to hit Q, and I'm going to select every piece, which is 6 things. And you'll notice I've got an unwrap UVW modifier on all of them. Now I could go in, click on each one, right click, collapse all, but instead I'm going to highlight the entire piece and go to my utilities. And under utilities you'll find collapse. right here. Now, under collapse, we are going to collapse selected, but we are going to collapse to modifier stack result. And click. So we do that, and collapse selected, and that should do it. So we should go back to the modifier list. We should be able to click each one, and they are all set to editable mesh, which is not what we like. We like editable poly, and we'll fix that in a second. But first, let's go ahead and select our person here. Now, we are going to be dealing with a ton of objects. If you hit H, this is the same scene that I had before. Okay? So if I display everything, turn all this stuff on. If I display everything, you'll see that I've got all these cylinders, right? And I've got a bunch of things in here, including a light, my plane, my reference files, and then I've got this torso. And the torso has a little plus next to it, and that's my hierarchy. See, H is our select from scene window, and it's really, really going to be important as we move on this week. So you'll notice I've got the torso, and all these pieces are connected to the torso. The head, the arm, left arm, left leg, right arm, right leg. Okay, now they are all linked to the torso, just like we did before. What we're going to do is we're just going to start a naming convention system that we can keep track of. So anything that is a mesh, I'm going to call it P for poly. Okay. The reason why I'm not going to use M is because M is going to be material when we get into Unreal. So for today, we're just going to do P for poly. So go ahead and select the center part of your character here. Go up here and say, go ahead and hit P, right? Underscore, and then we can call this character. Okay. Now this actually gets us to a good point because we're going to do a lot of renaming. And in order to do a lot of renaming efficiently, there's actually a tool that does it for us. So here I've got my head, my arm, my left arm, my right leg, left leg. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to add the P underscore in front of each one of these pieces. Okay, so go ahead and select all of the extremities, so the head, the two arms, and the two legs. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to Tools, down here to Rename Objects. Now rename objects is moderately annoying because it doesn't really show you what happens immediately. So you're just going to have to, we're going to have to do it and then check. Okay, so first things first, we want to make sure we're on selected only. We're going to go under base name, we're going to turn this off. Under prefix, we're going to type P and an underscore because that'll be what goes the prefix before all the files or all of our objects. Alright, now there's suffix, so if we wanted to have like something else or we want to have some other stuff in there, we could do that. So let's go ahead and click rename, and then it doesn't look like anything happened, which is annoying. But if you look at each piece, it all has P in front of it now. P for poly. That's great. So now if we look at a huge list of things, we can see our polygons will be P, our bones will be B, in excuse me, in Unreal, we will have M for material. Alright, so moving right along. So what we need to do now is we need to actually attach all of these pieces. Now even though each one of these pieces is a separate object, we did that so we could animate them separately, because the objects themselves can be animated if they're the same object. So what we're going to do now is we're going to attach them because we're going to use bones to drive all of our animation from now on. So I'm going to right click on our torso here. I'm going to right click on it and convert it to an editable poly. I know that you can't really see the window here. It's unfortunate, but you know, you go down and then to the bottom and then the second one down. Convert to editable poly. We've done it a lot, so hopefully you've been able to follow along. So now you can tell that it's an editable poly. Now I'm going to attach all the other pieces. So I'm going to click attach and then click on the head and the arms and the legs. Great. That's it. That's absolutely... Actually, before we do that, let's get our position set. Our head is fine, so we can leave that there. But I'm going to actually select my arms here. I'm going to hit F for front, and I'm going to rotate them first. I'm going to rotate them up 90 degrees, both of them. 90 degrees that way, 90 degrees that way. Okay, and I'm going to leave them there so they're sticking out a little bit. That's okay. The legs are going to be fine the way they are, but we definitely want the arms sticking out. That pose is going to be a lot better for when we start skinning our object. So now go back in, select the hit Q, select your torso, and attach the arms. Okay, great. So now this is set up pretty well. So now the only thing we have to do now is sort of rename the rest of the scene. So we can actually do that by hitting H and looking at the setup. In here right now we have the character selected, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to select all of these cylinders. You can actually select the top cylinder because we're going to take these cylinders and turn them into tree. Now what's nice is we can look at cylinder here and figure out exactly how many letters we have in there. CYLINDER 001. So that's 11. Okay, great. Once we select all those things, all right, so that's good. So we should click OK here. So we've got all of these trees selected. We have 24 trees selected. Go to Tools, Rename Objects. All right, the base name we're going to call Tree. We are going to give them a number. Base number will be 0, and then they'll go up by 1. The prefix will actually, we can do the base name as P_tree, and we are going to remove the first 11 digits of the name. All right, so we click rename, and let's see, go down, rename. Oh, we can get rid of this part first. Let's do that first. Rename. There. So with 10 digits, we've got that. Now let's go ahead and look at where we're at. So if I hit H again, I've just got numbers. Okay. Click OK, and then hit H again. I've got all these numbers selected. Okay, I'm going to go to Tools, Rename Objects, Base Name, P_tree, and then Numbered Rename. Now we can see how that looks. Oops, I noticed that's in the wrong thing. So hit H again. So we have P tree, all these numbers. There we go. Great. Our plane we can select by clicking OK, and then we can just rename that to P ground. All right, and then H again. So we've got all of our character, all of our trees, and all these reference things that are hidden, but that's okay. All right, so that's basically it. So we've set this up. We've set up our character. I'm going to actually hide all this background stuff because we don't need it. We're not going to need it for a while. I'm going to double check to make sure I didn't forget anything. We've got our naming tool, and then we rename the rest of the scene. So we've hit everything we need to do for today. So today was a short one because we're just trying to get everything set up so we're ready to go for the next video. Okay, in the next video, we're actually going to readjust this model to make him a little more animatable. All right, we're going to give him some feet, we're going to give him some elbows, and we're going to work on that. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you up on the next one.